Good morning. A woman once told her friends that I turned my husband into a millionaire. What do you mean? How did you do that? She said, well, before he was a billionaire, and after we got married, I got him to be a millionaire. Or there's the joke about the father who's posing with his son for the graduation picture, and the mother says, Junior, put your hand around your father's neck. Make it look natural. The father says, natural? Put his hand in my pocket. One of the main mitzvahs of Purim is the idea of matanos la'avyonim, giving gifts to the poor. We know we have four general mitzvahs: the reading of the Megillah at night and by day, giving mishleach manos, which is gifts of food to your friends, and having a feast. But then there's the mitzvah which I want to talk about today, and that's matanos la'avyonim, giving money to the poor. It's an important mitzvah. We learned, the halacha tells us that it's better if someone's going to increase, someone's going to do a lot wants to do a lot, better to do a lot more matanos la'avyonim than it is to do lots of shalach manos. Because giving money to the poor is a great thing, especially on Purim, it's a big mitzvah, and so on and so forth. The question that I want to share today is, why is it called matanos la'avyonim, gifts to the poor? Okay, and this is the term that's used in the pasuk in the Megillah. When the Megillah tells us about the need that we're going to be giving, it says mushleach manos ish l're'ehu matanos la'avyonim, gifts to the poor. Why is it called gifts? Why is it not called tzedakah to the poor, charity to the poor? It's a very unusual term. It's not just in the Megillah. We have it in Gemara. We have it in Shulchan Aruch. We have the Mishnah Berurah brings. A person is required to give at least two gifts to two people, to two poor people, at least something monetary, but to two different people. And we're using the concept, we're using the term matanos, gifts. Okay? Why is charity on Purim called a gift? It shouldn't be called a gift. Usually, we call tzedakah charity. Okay, what's the difference? It's not just the semantics of what to call it. Should we call it gifts or should we call it charity? There's a very, very big difference. What's a gift? Why does someone give a gift to someone else? The Gemara tells us that ilav the ovid naichal linafshei lo yohiv lematnosa, which means in Aramaic, if a person is not doing something good for his friend, he wouldn't have given him a gift. Why do you give someone a birthday present? For what reason? It's something you like the person, you have a relationship with them, you appreciate something that they've done. There's some reason why you're giving a gift. Payment is to someone who earned it. Someone works for you, he's an employee, he did a job for you, he did some kind of service for you, you have to pay them. A gift is not exactly payment, but it's also not exactly for no reason. When someone gives a gift, there's some reason why that gift is being given. They're expressing appreciation, or it's a relationship that they have, that they enjoy one another. There's a reason why a gift is being given. So in a sense, the Gemara tells us that a gift is earned. It's earned. You did something that person should want to give you a gift. Charity is not earned. When you meet someone in need and they ask you for money and you decide to give them, you give them because you know they need it. You may not even know them. This morning in Shul, we had probably more than 20 people that came around. Unfortunately, that they need. They came and they were asking for money. Okay, some were asking for institutions and so on. You don't know these people. You never met them. They're coming around for something. It's not a gift. It's charity. Yet when the Megillah tells us to give gifts of money to the poor on Purim, it says gifts, not charity. It sounds like we met the person, we know them, they did something good for us, we gave them the money. Why is that? It's even a bigger question, because on Purim we say that kol hapoishet yad neistim lei. Anyone that stretches out their hand and wants to have money from you on Purim, we give it to them. What does this mean? During the year, if someone comes to you for charity, it's normal to try to find out what is it that they want. Are they deserving of the charity? Are they legitimate? Maybe it's a fake. What do they want? I'm not saying you have to put them through the immigration process of trying to figure out who they are and so on and so forth. But for the most part, you want to know, I'm giving someone charity. Are they indeed needing of this charity? Okay. You trust them. You get to know them. Okay. You find out. Granted, someone comes over to you, you don't know them necessarily, but you check their paper. Who are you? Where are you from? Like something. On Purim, the Gemara tells us anyone that stretches out their hand and says, give me, don't ask too many questions, just give. It's Purim. Someone wants something, give them. We don't have that general approach where we're asking and trying to find out and double checking. So we see that on Purim, good morning. On Purim, there's a much bigger emphasis on charity in general and less of the gift component. I want to explain one more time. By the way, those that are watching online, you're welcome to write questions. We're happy to address them. Write it in the comments. Share the video. When someone gets a gift, there's a reason why they got the gift. When someone gives a gift, there's a reason why they gave the gift. The person that you're giving the gift to did something for you. You appreciate something about them. You're expressing something. You don't give a gift for no reason. Charity is giving without a reason. You're giving charity because the person needs it. You don't know that person. They didn't do anything good for you. You're just giving it to them. Okay? On Purim, we're calling the gifts to the poor gifts. We're not calling it charity. Why? And on Purim, we're meant to have an extra level and a greater attitude of Hai Mikel and Hai Vadim. We're supposed to have a greater attitude of towards charity. It says anyone that asks, give them. You don't try to find out exactly what's going on. So why do we call it matanes? Why do we call it gifts? So in order to understand this, we have to understand a very great question, which was asked by Turnus Rufus. Turnus Rufus, the Gemara in Baba Basra, Daf Yud, page 10a, brings the story about Turnus Rufus. He was a Roman emperor, a governor with a lot of power. And he actually tried unsuccessfully to stop the beginning of the Bar Kokhba revolt. He was not successful, but he was a wicked person. And he came and he asked Rabbi Akiva the following question. There was a lot of discussion, fascinating discussion between him and the sage Rabbi Akiva. But he asked him like this: why does Hashem allow for giving charity? Why did he make poor people? Now here's what he says. When Hashem made someone poor, he wants that person to be poor. Okay, God destined that one person is rich, the other person is poor. Okay. Imagine, this governor says, imagine that you're a king and you took an individual and you locked them up and you wanted them to starve. You put them in a dungeon. And someone else comes by and opens the dungeon and puts in some food for the fellow. How would you as a king respond? You'd be furious. One second, you're messing around with my plans for this person. I want him to starve to death, the king says. Turnus Rufus tells Rabbi Akiva, when you give charity to someone else, this Roman governor complains, you're messing with God's plans. Why are you changing it? God wanted this person not to have money. You wanted this person to have money. Don't play around with these things. Okay? It's if you think about it, it's a pretty powerful question. Why are you messing with God's arrangements? Rabbi Akiva, I see you're shaking your head. Rabbi Akiva argues, he says, one second. Imagine a king had a son, and he got upset at his son. And the prince, he locked him away. And then someone came by and opened the dungeon door, and he gave the prince money. Would the king appreciate it? Of course he would appreciate it. It's a different relationship. He had to do what he had to do for whatever reason. This person was meant to be, not to have money. But when you go and help them, Hashem is happy for it. God is pleased that you're doing that. It's a positive thing. So Rabbi Akiva answers him and says, you're misjudging the setup of the world. But it's not just Turnus Rufus. David HaMelech, King David, says in Tehillim, Psalm 61, verse 8, he says like this: Yeshiv Eilam Ifnei Elikim, may the world sit before God, but who will perpetuate kindness and truth. Now, this is a result of a conversation that he had with Hashem. The Medrash tells us, David HaMelech told Hashem the following: Ribayin Ha'elam, master of the world, why don't you make the world equal? Why do you have some people that are needy and some people that have? Others have to beg for money. Others' money comes knocking on their door. Why is it like that? Make the world equal. Let everyone have everything they need. Why do you have to have some givers, some receivers? What's going on here? And it was a strong complaint that he had to Hashem. And it was a very righteous complaint. He wants there to be no more poverty in the world. There should be only good. Everyone should have everything they need. So Hashem answered him the following. God says, Chesed ve'emes man yitzeru. What about kindness and truth? Integrity. What about kindness? If everyone's going to have everything they need, how is charity going to happen? Who's going to give anything to anyone else? Everyone's wealthy or everyone's poor or everyone's equal. There's no kindness. Okay? So Hashem, King David wanted Hashem to streamline the world, make everyone the same. And Hashem says, no, I can't make everyone the same because I need to have some givers and some receivers. And if there's no receivers, there's no givers. And then there's no kindness. Okay, this is thousands of years before Karl Marx. David HaMelech says, let's make equality. Let's make everyone the same. Let's figure this thing out. And Hashem says, no, I need kindness in the world. Okay. But let's look at King David's question for a moment. It's a very strong question. Today they call it epic. It's an epic question. Why? Why is there poverty in the world? Okay, some people, their whole life, they're poor. And others don't know how to spell poverty. Right? They just opportunity is knocking on their front door the whole time. They never knew what it means they never wanted to be rich because they always were rich. Not to generalize, but why do you have these categories in the world? Okay. And the answer is that Hashem wants that everything in the world exists in pairs. Okay. No one's an island. Every creature has a partner to it. Okay. There's male. What?
What will be in them, Moshe?
I hope we can get to that. There's male and female. There's the lover and there's beloved. There's heaven and there's earth. There's prey and there's predator. Right. There's a parent and there's an offspring. There's a master, a teacher, and a disciple. You constantly have this giving and receiver. There's a manufacturer and a consumer, a philanthropist and a pauper. Everything in this world is set up in such a way that it's like the sun and the moon, a therapist and a patient. There's always the giver, the receiver, the giver and the receiver, constantly going on like this in the world. And the reason why this is like this is because Hashem looks for a world of kindness. He wants a world where people help each other, where people are giving things to one another. That's what he's looking for. And in order to have that, he had to create this inequality. Because then you have a good world where people are giving. Okay? What Hashem is telling David HaMelech, King David, is very profound. In truth, there's no qualitative difference in God's perspective between the one who gives and the one who receives. It's a setup, okay? One person is going to give and one person is going to receive. The wealthy man and the poor man. But from Hashem's vantage point, from his point of view, what we're doing here is allowing the opportunity for kindness to take place in the world. So the question is, how are you giving? Are you giving by the one because you're giving the money? Or are you giving because you don't have, you're needy, and you're creating the opportunity for someone else to give? So from Hashem's standpoint, there is equality. They're all the same. It's just a question of who's giving and how they're giving. Are you giving by giving, or are you giving by needing and allowing the opportunity to give? But we're both here to bring kindness to the world. And from a Jewish value perspective, it's the structure of the world. It's the fabric of creation that we have kindness, that we exercise kindness, that we behave in a kind way, and there has to, unfortunately, be the need for that. But from Hashem's angle, it's not one's lacking. He's giving. He's allowing the other person to give.
If it starts with the world, how come we enjoy more giving than receiving?
We enjoy giving more than receiving because abundance is always better. Having is better than not having. It's we're talking about from God's perspective. We obviously, when you don't have, it's painful. I mean, you have to ask, it's hard. But the concept in the world of why don't we have equality is because Hashem wanted that there should be the giving and the receiving, there should be the kindness in the world. What King David is being explained by Hashem is, wait a moment. What we're having here is, as far as I'm concerned, it's all equal. Because each person is contributing to this kindness. There's a fascinating story, and I hope I do it justice, from Rabbi Simon Jacobson. He's the author of Towards a Meaningful Life. He shares that at one of his classes, there was a fellow who came over to him after the class, and he saw as he walked up to him that he had a certain handicap. And then he asked in a very slurred way, he couldn't get the words out clearly. He said, "Rabbi, could I talk to you after the class privately?" I said, "Sure." So they're speaking for a little bit, and he shares with him the following, that he's born with a handicap, and his parents, without judging, they couldn't deal with him. So they gave him away at birth. And they put him in a very fine institution with very good care. He was raised, for all practical purposes, like an orphan, but a privileged orphan. He had everything that he needed. And he knew that there's a couple out there, it's his parents, he never met them, they don't want to see him, and they're giving him everything that he needs. Now, when he got older, it turned out he was kind of misdiagnosed. It wasn't that bad. There were issues. He had a certain disease. There were problems and developmental delays and other issues, but it wasn't as drastic as they originally thought. And now this fellow that's talking to Rabbi Jacobson is already an adult. And he's talking to them, and he says, I don't know. I'm thinking, I want to reach out to them and talk to them, but I don't know how they're going to accept me. And I'm not sure if I should. But at the same time, there's a certain pain that I do want to address. Rabbi Jacobson is thinking, and they ended the conversation, and a few months later, it came up again after a class, and again he brought it up, and again they spoke about it, he thought about it. Rabbi Jacobson decided, give me the phone number, let's get a hold of the phone number, I'll call them. So he calls this father, very wealthy man, and he tells him, "My name is Rabbi Jacobson, and I'm calling on behalf of your son, so-and-so, and I'd like to talk to you." And the phone clicks. He hangs up. Wow, I don't know what to do now. So he waits a little bit. A couple weeks later, he calls back. This time, the secretary didn't put the call through. So he called again. He left a message. It's a very private, personal matter. If he could please call me. And he called him back. And we'll call him, the father called back Rabbi Jacobson. And he says, "We put this behind us a long time ago. We don't want to go there. And my wife's not ready to go there." So Rabbi Jacobson said, "Listen, I met your son. I really think you'd enjoy meeting him." And he said, "No, thank you." And he hung up. Rabbi Jacobson called back again a few weeks later. And the fellow said, "We're not ready yet." Okay, so there's some hope here. And then he called again. And finally, they said, "Okay, let's have a meeting. But we want you to be there." He wasn't sure what the point was, but he came. There was a meeting in their house. He came in together with this adult son who was already a student of his. They were studying for a long time together. He walked in, and there was the father and the mother. Beautiful house. The coffee table was prepared with some biscuits and some tea, and they're sitting. And the son turns to his parents and says, "Mom and Dad." He never referred to them in all his conversations with Rabbi Jacobson. He never referred to him that way. "I'd want you to know that I apologize for not being perfect, but you're not perfect either. I forgive you for not being perfect. Can you forgive me for not being perfect?" Terrible. He said that everyone in the room was crying. What this son did, and I want to express it in this way, he brought out a certain kindness and a certain sensitivity within his parents that perhaps weren't there. Rabbi Jacobson shares that he brought out within himself in all their conversations a deep, deep appreciation for humanity, which he felt he was lacking before. This person may have looked at himself, this child, now adult, may have looked at himself as lacking, as deficient, as whatever else it may be. But what he contributed to society and what he brought to others, including his own parents, was tremendous. Maybe they had it deep down somewhere, allowed them to come to terms with it, brought out feelings of sensitivity and kindness in others that they otherwise wouldn't have or wouldn't develop. We look at the world and we say, why is one person wealthy and the other person poor? Why is this one the giver? Why is this one the receiver? It's a good question. We want everyone to have everything they need. We have to understand from God's perspective what he answers King David, what Rabbi Akiva answers to Turnus Rufus, to the Roman governor. He says, God wants kindness in the world. And therefore, someone has to be on the receiving end so he could get that kindness. So kindness could be done. The person that's on the receiving end temporarily should not see himself as all I do is receive. He should view himself that I'm contributing by way of receiving. I want to suggest that when a person gives charity, whether it's the beggar standing outside with a tin cup or someone that comes around collecting for a noble cause, let's look at them when we give that $1 or more. Let's look at them and think they're allowing the opportunity, they're giving me the possibility to do kindness. And not to see it as, oh, I'm giving them. Let's get back to our original question. Why on Purim do we call charity gifts to the poor and not charity to the poor? Because as the Talmud tells us, gifts are given, they're earned. They're not earned like a salary is earned, but they're earned because they're an expression of appreciation. You don't give a gift to somebody, says the Talmud, unless they've done something pleasant for you. Whether it's the relationship that you enjoy with them, whether it's something that they did for you, whether it's whatever contribution they brought to you. When you give a gift, you're giving because of something. When you give charity, you're not giving because of something. They need, so you're giving them. On Purim, we all rise to a higher level. We become a little bit more in tune and sensitive with what the whole picture of the world is. The givers and the receivers are not because they're just receiving. They're receiving because they're contributing through receiving. And therefore we call it gifts. Because the gifts are thank you for allowing me to be able to give.
So that's true every day.
Correct. But every day we're not in touch with it. Every day we're not on the level of Purim. That's exactly the point. I'll repeat the question for those that are listening, if they maybe didn't hear the question. Every day it's true. Right? By the way, again, anyone that's watching online, hello, welcome. You could ask questions in the comments. We encourage you to share the video with others. On Purim, the Megillah tells us gifts to the poor, and the Talmud brings it, and the Halacha brings it, the Jewish law brings it, specifically this term. It doesn't change, that verbiage. And there's a drastic difference of how you call it. Because matanes represents thank you to the recipient, the poor person, for being here to receive money from me. Because by me giving to you, you're allowing kindness to happen. Now I could do something good. Of course, everyone wants to be on the giving end. But on Purim, we have a glimpse of God's perspective. And that's why we call it gifts. The challenge is the rest of the year to see it that way. It shouldn't just be a Purim thing. We should be able to take Purim to the rest of the year and always look at a situation, whether we're on the receiving end, I don't mean just monetary, whatever it may be. If we're on the receiving end, we should see it not as poor me, I have to receive, right? I'm the student, he's the teacher, right? Or someone's the patient, someone else is the doctor, someone else is the receiver, in whatever capacity it is. They should recognize that by them being the receiver, they're contributing something. They're bringing out positivity, good, kindness, so on and so forth. This is a challenge. It's very hard. It's easier to think of it that way when you're on the giving end, obviously. But that's the message of Purim. That's the message of giving gifts of poor, gifts of money to the poor, gifts specifically, and not charity to the poor.
there is now when you cook some for the kids, you will give it to them.
Excellent.
But
It's a
if
very
you
good
want
point.
cake,
Okay,
it's bad.
fine. It's a little more complicated. But when you're giving something, when someone allows you to give, let's say a grandparent.
Don't lie.
Let's say a grandparent wants to give something to a grandchild. So if when they give to their grandchild, they want to give, and they're begging for the opportunity to give. Something a spouse wants to give to a spouse, they want the opportunity to give. Okay, I have a question here. I'm going to read it from Mikkel. Is it ever wrong to give? Is it our decision to decide whether or not giving will help the person, or is every time a chance to connect with Hashem? It's a great question. Is it ever wrong to give? Well, never say never, and we have to see how to give and what scenarios to give. But we do have to take the opportunity seriously. When something comes our way, when we see, there's something here, we have to look at it as the reason why I know about this, and the reason why it came my way is because I have the task, the ability, the opportunity. There's no coincidences in this world. And God wanted me to find out about this need in order to be able to help them. Helping sometimes may be by not giving. I don't know the rare occasion, but it came across my path for a reason. It's not just a way to connect to God, it's a way to help that person. But yes, and during the year we say, let's do due diligence. Let's find out, does this person really need? We don't have to put them through the ringer, but we should try to find out. But yes, there are situations when maybe the giving is not helping. It's perpetuating a situation or so on. But it's an area that we have to really, really handle with caution, because sometimes we're wrong in that decision, in that our assumption of the scenario, of the reality, and we could be making a big mistake by not giving. We have to be very, very careful. Let's use the following as a principle. If a need comes my way, someone is asking me for something, there's a reason. I can't ignore it. Even if I decide to say no, it has to be a calculated reason why I'm saying no. I'll share that this is not very known, but the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, would get a lot of requests from around the world to his personal residence. Every organization was sending letters. His address was available, and he was on every list, right? They say if you ever get on a Jewish mailing list, it's like toothpaste out of the tube. You can never put it back in. If you're on the list, you're always going to get those calls and always going to get those letters forever. But he always responded. Always, always, always. Whether it was a small amount, but every request got something, some kind of response, a monetary response. It could be $18, it could be $5, but something, I don't know how much he gave. But they always got something in return. The point is like this. I believe there are times when a person is not supposed to give, right? I don't want to generalize, but if someone comes and they're on drugs, and by you giving them, you're continuing that, that's what they're using it for. You have to think, you have to analyze, you have to put a little bit thought into this. But generally, the attitude is one of giving, the attitude is one of helping, and more importantly, if I know about it, there's a reason for it. So on Purim, we're asking, instead of why you, we're asking why me? Why am I the one that's giving, not complaining? Why am I the one that's giving? They're the one that's receiving. But we're in this together. We're in this to be able to bring kindness and goodness to the world. We shared recently the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. There's a halacha which says anyone that reads the Megillah backwards, the Mishnah tells us, wasn't Yetza, right? If someone decides, I want to read the Megillah, the scroll of Esther, I want to read it starting from the last chapter. We'll go from 10 to 9 to 8. We'll go all the way backwards. Why not? Purim is a fun time. We'll go backwards. We'll spoil it before the story, right? You're not Yetza. You have to start from the beginning. You have to go forward. But the Baal Shem Tov tells us this is not just a practical teaching. We had yesterday in Hayom Yom, we said that the halacha, there are two parts to halacha. There's the law. We have to understand the practical law. So number one, you have to understand how this law applies in the heavenly levels, in every world, spiritual, celestial beings, celestial realities. It's only one being, God. But the celestial realities, we have to understand how this Jewish law of charity or whatever else applies in some kind of spiritual form. But then every mitzvah has a way we have to understand, how could I apply it to my personal service of God? How could I apply it to my connection, to my self-development, to my growing? we have to look at Purim and say it's not something from the past. Backwards, says the Baal Shem Tov, doesn't mean just backwards. It means you're looking at it something that's from a long time ago. In Hebrew, limafreya means backwards, retroactive, something from a long time ago, irrelevant. When it says if you read the Megillah backwards, it doesn't say backwards, it says if you read it limafreya. And that word could mean two different things. And the Baal Shem Tov says, let's look at it on a deeper level. Let's look at the spiritual self-development level. Let's look at the message that this law is telling us, in addition to not reading the Megillah backwards. Let's not look at the story of Purim and all the mitzvahs of Purim as something which is irrelevant. It's from a long time ago. It's backwards. It's something which, it happened thousands of years ago. We were in Persia. The Jews had a problem. We read about it. No. Let's look at it relevant today. Every aspect of the Megillah. But this piece of gifts to the poor that the Megillah tells us, let's make it a goal, a mission for ourselves, right? Let's do it. Let's make an action item that we are going to, the next time someone turns to us and asks us for something, whether you could help them or you can't help them, but recognize that we're all part of this one web in this world, and it's all about being able to do kindness. They happen to be on the side which is enabling the kindness, creating the need for the kindness. So let's treat them that way. Let's understand the difficulty that they're going through. Let's have that compassion, that feeling, and let's give when we can. And may Hashem help that no one should ever need. And we should find other ways to give kindness to one another, all in good ways and happy ways. Before we end today's lesson, I want to take some more questions from those of you sitting here, or I'm just going to talk about coffee.
You can't use mastermind. Maybe it's one of the reasons.
You can't use my money?
Can you?
You're saying to use money. The question is, if you could use the money that's set aside for tithing, if you could use it for Matanos Levin, you can. Yeah. Yeah. Why not?
I don't know. It's a different.
Well, it's a great question. Let's look in the laws of Ma'is Lepurim. Okay, so we have the laws of Machzas HaShekel, the night of Purim. 1 second. Yeah, no, but besides that, 1 second. Okay. Doesn't say that you can't give him a meiser. Okay, so I'm going to explain just for the video, for the broadcast. Your question is, or your comment is, that we have a requirement a whole year that we have to give meiser. We have to give 10%. Okay, and remind me, I want to share a story. I forgot to share the story. We have to give meiser 10% of whatever you earn net. You have to give to charity. Now on Purim, you got to give gifts to the poor. Are those gifts to the poor extra on top of the tithing or not? I don't see here that I never heard that it has to be in addition to the tithing. It could be part of your meiser. I will look into it more. But one other interesting halacha he says here, even someone that's a recipient of charity, he's a poor person, he still has to give charity.
Yes.
Okay. I want to share a story of charity. You see, I didn't put it in my notes. Excuse me, and I forgot to say it. Story takes place in the town of Berdichev. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berdichev, the great tzaddik, he was the author of Kedushas Levi. He was known as the Sanigoran Shel Yisrael, which means the advocate of the Jewish people. He always was standing ready to help the Jewish people, to stick up for the Jewish people, even in front of God. But he saw something that was negative, he would always say something positive about the Jewish people. The story is that one time, it was the eve of Purim. They were about to start the Ma'ariv prayer, starting the holiday of Purim. And his attendant walks over to him in the shul, was packed with people, men, women, and children. The whole community was there. He walks over to him and whispers something in his ear. And the tzaddik, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, gets up and he starts to walk out of the shul. Now, when you stand up, if he's the tzaddik, the whole community stands up. He walked out. No one asked any questions. They just waited. He comes to the place where they would answer questions, and there's a woman waiting there. It's like a small side room, and she's holding a chicken. Now, in those days, you don't go to the store and buy ready-made chicken. You buy a live chicken. You take it to the sheikh, the slaughterer. He slaughters it. Sometimes there could be issues in the way it was slaughtered or something about the chicken which renders it unkosher. Then you run to the rav, to the rabbi, and you say, "Is this a kosher chicken? Can I use it? And there was a question. And the butcher told her, I'm not sure, go to the rabbi. She comes to the rabbi. She says, I'm really sorry for bothering you at this moment, but my husband, she says, is very ill. And I was hoping, I used my last kopecks to buy this chicken. I was hoping that I could give him some chicken soup. It'll help him get better. Plus, my kids would love the taste of chicken. It's been ages. But now there's a question on it. Is it kosher? And the rabbi looks at it and he sees that there's no way to make it. It's not kosher. He tells her, I'm really sorry, but this is not a kosher chicken. The way it was slaughtered is not okay. And she looks at him and she's devastated. She says, I used my last pennies and my husband is sick. And my kids have to eat. What am I going to do? And it's Purim. And the rabbi looks at her lovingly and says, you know, God is kind, especially it's Purim. I'm sure everything will work out. Trust in God. And she left heartbroken. Instead of the rabbi returning to shul, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev went to his house. Nobody was home. They were all in shul waiting for him. He walks in and he takes a big basket and he goes over to the stove, to the oven, to the cabinet, and he says, okay, what do we have here? He found a stuffed fish that his wife prepared for the dinner after Megillah tonight, after all day fasting. And he puts it in, and he's like, chicken soup, chicken soup. Does she have any chicken soup here? There's no one to ask. He doesn't exactly know what's going on in the kitchen. He finds a pot of soup, puts the pot in the basket. Then he looks around and he sees, oh, fresh hamantaschen, just baked. Puts the whole thing in. He finds a few other delicatessen, puts it all together, and he marches, you guessed it, towards her house. She's in shul. He walks in, and he hears a noise, a voice. It's the ill husband. He says, Gittel, is that you? And he says, this is actually it's a gift. Shalach manas, we have shalach manas for you. Now, shalach manas is given by day, but shalach manas to you. And he quickly he goes. He didn't identify himself. He puts on the table. He puts the pot of soup, and he unwraps the hamantaschen and the fish and a few other things that he brought. Sets everything up really nicely, and he turns around and says, Happy Purim, and you should remember that God loves you, and everything will be great, and I hope you feel better soon. And he leaves. This woman comes home after Shalach Manas, after Megillah. She comes home and she's, wow, this is unbelievable. There's everything I need. There's chicken soup and there's food and the family. It was the best Purim ever. The next morning, she runs to shul and she says, guys, you'll never believe what happened. The Rebbe, the tzaddik, told me that God will provide, don't worry. And sure enough, this year I had Shalach Manas from heaven. And in her simple, sincere faith, she expressed that. Now, that night, the night before, while she went home and enjoyed the meal, the Rebbe's Rebbetzin went home and saw that there's no food. She put something together real quick. She understood it. Probably her husband was here. She got it, and they figured out something to eat. But the next morning, when the community found out that this woman had Shalach Manas from heaven, they understood. And they said, if that's the case, the rabbi and the Rebbetzin probably don't have anything. So they brought food to the Rebbe's house. And tremendous amount. And they said that in Berditchev, this was the greatest Purim ever. The feeling of kindness and the feeling for the love for one another and the giving was so great. And if you take this to our class and look for a moment and say, this woman was stuck, she had a problem, but thanks to her issue, and no one should have any issues, she ended up bringing a spirit of Purim to a level which never existed before. Let's all be on the giving end with God's help. And if we ever notice someone that needs something, remember they're giving us more than we're giving them. Thanks for joining. Hope to see you tomorrow on Facebook, YouTube, and in person. Tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem.
Whoa.